Greetings, neighbors. This is Reflections, the program sponsored by the Paducah Cooperative Ministry, where we, all of us together, do God's work with human hands. My name's Gregory Waldrop, and I'm the pastor at Fountain Avenue United Methodist Church, and I'm one of your co-hosts. I'm glad you're with us. I'm glad also to have with us my co-host, Karen Winkel, who's the pastor at the United Church of Paducah. Welcome, Karen.
Good to see you, Gregory.
Yeah, glad to be right here with you.
Well, I'm excited today because we have Susan Edwards, who is an artist in Paducah and also the owner of Wildhair Studios. And in our programs this year, we've been inviting artists from the community to come and share with us how their faith, their sense of God's movement in their life and in the world comes into their art. And Susan was one of the first people that I met when I moved to Paducah, and it was very clear to me that she's a person of the Spirit. And as I've gotten to know her, I know that spirituality that is so much a part of her is expressed in your art and in your business. So. Yes. Welcome, Susan.
Thank you.
And thank you for spending time with us. Where shall we start? This is
well, I think a lot of people are kind of curious about the name Wildhair Studios. And some people think that it's a hair studio, but in fact it was named after my fondness of chasing wild hair schemes, which becoming a full-time artist and then opening a gallery certainly felt like it fell into that category. So it really started, well, many years ago, but in February of 2003, I found myself unemployed and looking for a job, recently moved to Paducah, and I was not having a lot of success finding a traditional type job. I had been a marketing consultant, self-employed, and when I lost the contract, it was, what do I do now? So I wasn't having a lot of success applying for traditional jobs, so I did what I usually do, which was to turn to my faith and pray, and the answer came back, paint an angel. I'm like, paint an angel. Now I had played around with watercolors most of my life, but it was just a fun hobby, and I had never really attempted to do anything commercially, so I was a little confused about that, and let's just say that the first attempt to paint an angel was pretty hilarious and not very encouraging for the career in art that I thought it was telling me I should do. So.
Oh, that's neat. And you were in a place that was encouraging to that kind of arrangement.
Yeah. So I was very excited to be in Paducah, and so I tried a couple of times to paint this angel that I had been instructed to paint, and it wasn't working so well. So what really transpired was a series of cartoons, because I thought, well, you know, circumstances are pretty much making a joke out of my life right now, so perhaps God was suggesting I go out and make people laugh. So I did some more meditating, and I came up with a series of about 8 different cartoons, and then I started showing them to people, and they were laughing, so that was a good thing. And so what happened was I came up with a series of marketable cartoons of cards and prints. Would you like to see one?
Yeah.
All right. Well, the first one was my little character, who I've named Jane Doe. And that's Jaynedough, Jane Doe. Got to be a little different and everything, of course.
Sure.
And she's on a road, and she's got her wild hair, of course, and she's asking, or suggesting that, you know, I guess when I asked God for a sign, I should have been a little more specific. So my angel, which evolved into my shooting star, and then we've got our signpost here, and one direction says friends, another direction says career, we've got family, and relationships all going in different directions. So this was really to sort of talk about my confusion about, okay, God, what direction am I supposed to take with all of this? So that was the first cartoon, and I call that one Signs. And a lot of times it's like, if you ask God for a sign, make sure you don't run smack dab into it.
Right. Trip over it.
Yeah. And then the second one was a little bit more about my prosperity and what I was supposed to be doing with my life. And so here's Jane sitting on a cliff asking, you know that divine plan for my life? how about a clue sometime soon? So even though I was confused, I knew that God did have a plan for my life, and it was just up to me to find it. So that was the series of cartoons that got everything started.
Right. Amazing amount of confidence in the middle of a real tumultuous time. I know there were
Yeah.
plenty of temptations to go back to something more familiar. Tell us about that
was.
struggle a little bit. Something
Well,
more.
it was one of those heck of a years. Turned 50, had a major operation, hysterectomy, moved to a new city, lost my contract. So yeah, it was like, whoa. And that's where if you ask God for a sign, make sure you don't run into it. Because it felt like I had run into it and was smack dab on my back. But I really did understand that everything that was happening, despite the chaos, it really helped to define what my priorities were. And my priorities were, of course, God, family, me, my health, and then my service. And what I really stayed focused on was, okay, there's a lot of changing going on right now. What's emerging out of it? And what was emerging out of it was this new career in art and cartooning. And it was a different direction for me, and it was scary. But I also had a lot of confidence that there's the path. I asked for the path, and God showed me the path, and so have the faith to walk it. And then the other thing that I did was I self-ordained myself. So I actually am an ordained minister, and I joke and say I'm the minister of humor therapy. And my ministry is to sneak the Word of God in using humor to folks who might not be caught dead in a church, but they'll stand here and read funny cards and prints all day long, and before they know it, they've been preached to. So that's how it got started.
Neat.
Well, the word that came to mind as you were kind of sharing your journey a little bit and sharing your work is playful.
Yes.
And I think so often we allow our faith to be kind of serious and, for lack of a better word, matronly.
Heavy.
And,
Yeah.
right. And so this playfulness, and not only is the expression playful, I think your inner process is fairly playful.
Well, it is.
Even as serious as your circumstance, there was a sense of play that I'm
Exactly.
hearing in that.
Well, there is, and some of my cartoons tend to be just a bit on the irreverent side. This is probably the most popular one. And here we have Jane at a picnic setting, and she's meditating and thinking, and she's asking, so if I was made in God's image, does that mean she's got a big butt too? And of course, it is a reasonable question. It is a reasonable question. And I do get some minor criticizing because some of my cartoons are a little bit outside of the box of traditional thinking and traditional organized religion. But my point is that, if God hadn't given us a sense of humor or laughter, I mean,
Right.
if He didn't want us to laugh and be joyful and have a playful side, everything is here for a reason, and
Sure.
laughter is one of it. And it's one of those universal characteristics of humans. All humans laugh. So apparently we're supposed to enjoy our life here. And the joke about all of this, of course, is to get you thinking about, well, what if I am in God's image? Is it okay to look the way I look? And is that okay?
Yeah.
And so that's sort of the joke about it.
Yeah. There's a great old tradition that the Monday after Easter is sort of an ancient tradition as being the big sort of practical joke day.
Really?
And
Oh, yes.
As a way of saying, God played this enormous joke on the devil at Good Friday and Easter, and there is this enormous divine comedy almost about life and it's sort of evolved into our April Fool's Day. We've got that sort of,
Yes.
that's the way it gets passed along in our culture, but
Yeah.
it's this notion that there is a divine comedy, and there is this very different overlay with what we expect and what God provides and how God works God's ways
Yes.
all
Yes.
kinds of ways.
Well, and you had asked earlier, you know, in the midst of all of this chaos that was seemingly going on in my world at that time, you know, how did I rise up out of that? And I really thought it was pretty funny because it pointed out to me how far outside of God's plan I really was. Because when I'm in God's plan, there is no chaos. Mm-hmm. When I'm outside of God's plan, it's everywhere. And you got to look at it and just sort of laugh and say, well, I guess it's time to pay attention to what God has planned for me, not what I have planned for me. And hopefully those kind of come together, but not always.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, let me just push you on that question just a
Sure.
little more and ask you, what were the kind of things, people, habits that really helped you keep your focus on that? It's one thing to be in the middle of chaos and you know, sometimes we make it out as to be this, we have to be sort of heroic and superhuman almost, but there's obviously other ways that you were helped outside of you, or maybe by your own habits and patterns. What were the things that helped you move through this chaos with that confidence? People, activities, what kind of things helped?
Well, part of it was just, you know, me laughing about it and just staying so clear that despite outward appearances, there's a plan going on here, and I'm not getting it necessarily, didn't at that point, but just trusting that it was going to unveil or reveal itself, and that if I was listening and watching, I would see the path that God had asked me to follow. And you know, people think that miracles have to be parting of the Red Sea and raising people from the dead, but in fact, every day there are these little bitty minor miracles that if you just pay attention, you see them and you hear them and you encounter them. And during that period of time, I was very, very aware that, you know, there were things going on, happening to pull me, push me into the direction I was supposed to go. And people would just appear. I would run into someone who'd say, oh, you know, you need to go talk to, and oh, what you really should be trying is this. Opportunities opened up. I was invited to be the resident artist at the Paducah Area Painters Alliance Gallery, the Pop-Up Gallery downtown, which gave me a much bigger exposure. It was just, whoop, there it was. And had I not been paying attention, I might not have, you know, noticed that it was a little miracle that opened up for me. So really just listening, watching, praying.
I think that's a very interesting notion. I think we sometimes overlook the fact that Jesus was almost often opened his conversations with the word behold.
Yeah.
As if to say, pay attention.
Yeah.
Look, see things different, new. I do, in my own life, see faith as a different way of seeing things.
Yeah.
And in some ways, I think that's the intrigue of the artistic endeavor, really. It's this new, different way of seeing things to help us notice what's all around us all the time. And you're bearing witness to that, and I'm intrigued by it. I really am.
Well, it's really interesting because, I mean, I do make a living as an artist, and I do portraits, and I paint, you know, flowers and landscapes and sort of the traditional type of art. I also have the cartoons, and the cartoons are now literally all over the world, thanks in part to the quilt contest and show that happens in April. We get visitors from all over the world, and people come in and they buy my things and take them home to Japan or Germany or Australia. So that's kind of exciting. But to talk about one more little God thing, I do what I call God stories. About almost a year ago now, I was walking from a friend of mine's downtown to the gallery to go to work, and I ran into the owner at the corner of 2nd and Broadway, and at the time, So Cool had moved out of that location. And I just said, hey, Bev, how are you? And 6 hours later, I was signing the lease to move in. And what a perfect example of another God story. I mean, I wasn't looking to move, and what a prime location downtown. And I looked at it in many different ways, one way being that it would be an excellent plan to expand my ministry, because I get a lot more people in, a lot more people see the work. you know, and before I opened, we had a little blessing and invited the Holy Spirit and God and Jesus to come in, and then we would invite the public.
Marvelous. But as I remember, there was this, there was a certain amount of faith involved, even. I mean, because I
had no fixtures, I had no real inventory, and this was about 1,000 square foot, and I had about 4 weeks to figure out. And, oh, by the way, I had not a lot of capital.
Yeah, really.
So this was like, you're going to do what? And people just literally broke their backs trying to help me. I had people come with fixtures, with artists with inventory, to put in on consignment. People come and help work. It was just truly amazing, and there was never any doubt in my mind that despite outwardly appearances that this made no sense, that this is where God wanted me to be. And it's worked out very well.
I said earlier that the word that was occurring to me was playful. Now the word that's occurring to me is surrender, because I think so often because emerging in your story is your willingness to surrender to something, even though it may not be making sense, to really surrender to that, to be present to that, but to not feel like it was all yours. It was all on you to make this happen. And I think, I'm trying to put myself in your position, and I think, man, would I feel burdened by trying to figure it out and make it happen. And I think you kept taking your desire, to make a contribution, to make a living and all of that, to have a meaningful life, but you kept kind of giving that over in a sense, and allowed yourself to not figure it out, but to kind of read it as it was presenting itself to you. And that is so hard when issues of survival are at stake.
And signing the lease and agreeing to, up the ante.
Formally
but it was interesting because for, I don't know, maybe 2 months before this occurred, I had been, asking and praying that I could expand my business and expand my ministry. And when this all happened, and I have to really bless my husband who, he's like, okay, even though it makes no sense. And I guess the joke is, when you ask God for help, if the bus shows up, get on.
Right.
And then find your money for, putting in the tokens and figure out where it's going. But the bus showed up and door opened and I jumped on.
Great.
And boy, what a ride.
Yeah.
It's been great, though. It really has been great. But it really was akin to, jumping off a very high cliff and hoping that your wings would sprout and dry out before you hit the bottom. So.
Let me ask you about a sort of a process question, a rhythm maybe question as an artist, as a human. I'm always aware in my own life about how sometimes we get unusual ideas about what we humans, the rhythms of human life. But certainly as an artist, and as a marketer even, there are rhythms. There are times of enormous activity and success, and there are other times of great quiet and stillness, and
like right now downtown.
Right now downtown. That's what makes me think about it. So tell me a little bit about those rhythms and where you and how as an artist you experience them, or as a
Well, that's a good question. And throughout my life, I've either been a performer or a writer, or I did advertising. And I would find that when I wasn't in the zone, I could sit there for hours in front of a keyboard and a blank screen, or in front of a canvas with paint, and it was not going to happen. And there were other times where I just couldn't do it fast enough. Couldn't type it fast enough, couldn't paint it fast enough, because it was just there. And I'm sure songwriters feel the same way. You hear stories about they wake up and the whole song is just, it's right there in their head, and 10 minutes later they've got a #1 hit. So when I'm in those slow periods, I just try to recognize that I'm just in a slow period. I'm just not in that zone. And I kind of think of it like winter and spring. The plant isn't dead, it's just resting during winter, and spring will come and summer will happen and fall will harvest. And so right now I'm preparing for actually a Valentine's Day event, which I think will be very good. And then of course we're steadily and quickly moving toward April, and that's the beginning of the tourist season downtown, and it just doesn't stop.
Great.
So I'm getting ready.
Well, and certainly, and as a pastor, as a minister, I think that's the most difficult part of the rhythms. That every Sunday comes around,
Yeah.
people are
They're
looking for
expecting
me
a
to
new
say
sermon,
something,
yes,
you know,
yes.
and
It's like,
and so the rhythms are almost weekly. You know, I have to sort of find the fallow time and the fertile time in
Yes.
every week almost, which is an interesting, a different kind of rhythm, but important one. And I appreciate what you're saying. I think we live sometimes in this sort of automated world, thinking we humans are like machines and we can just relentlessly plow ahead and be productive and every week turn out the same number of gadgets or whatever it is we're doing. And
Yeah.
I think
Not necessarily.
really, I think human
Yeah.
rhythms are very differently constructed.
Yeah.
The things that make for life. And I think again, artists help us
Yeah,
see that
and,
in a lot
and
of
I
ways.
think a lot of times I and probably all creative people try to make it a little too hard. When this was first sort of evolving, I found that my questions, sort of pictured out and spelled out, turned out to be very universal. My questions were a lot of people's questions, and my humor struck a chord with a lot of people, and didn't have to be real hard. It was just what's happening to me,
Right.
and sharing what's happening to me, sharing my God stories, and that seems to really touch a
Yeah.
chord with a lot of people. So I try not to make it too hard. Can I give you one example?
Please.
I just came up with a bunch of designs for Valentine's Day mugs. And I had a lot of frilly stuff, be my Valentine and hearts and like frilly things. And I thought, boy, I need one for a guy. I need a guy mug. I need a guy mug. And it's like, guy mug. So it's just black type guy mug with 2 stripes. That's it. And of course it's selling well. So didn't make it hard at all. Just make it simple.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Well done.
Well, one of the things, because you're talking about your process and the way that your sense of God's work, brings you to this moment. But I'm also thinking about just a day in the life of Wildhair. What is how does God express God's self in a day at your studio, and the way that you work with people and you work with the artists that are participating with you in that?
Okay. Well, the day starts, of course, when I wake up, and I like to spend at least a few minutes, maybe 5 minutes, in that nice little sleepy twilight area that you're just starting to come back to the real world, and thank God. Thank Him for inviting me back into the physical world again today. Thank Him for all of the opportunities, for a safe home to wake up into, and just try to really thank all my blessings that come, and set the tone for the day, and ask that if there was anything or any person or any project that I was supposed to be involved with, make it known, and I would be listening. And then, of course, we have to handle the cat and the dog,
Sure.
and the husband, and do all of
Well,
the sort
in
of
that order?
household things.
In that order?
In
Cat,
that order,
dog,
yeah.
husband?
Yeah,
okay,
usually,
well,
because they're all ready
I
to
gotcha.
get going. But I usually open the gallery at about 10 o'clock, and depending on the time of the year or the part of the week, I may have time to do some bookkeeping or some creating. I like to paint in the morning. I'm pretty much a morning person, so I like to go up and do my painting. I have a line of greeting cards, and that would often be the time that I would come up with new sayings or new art to go onto the greeting cards. And then at noon, things start to pick up downtown, and so I'm much more occupied with taking care of customers. And I like to, welcome everyone into the gallery, and like I said, from the very beginning, I've set the tone that before any customer walks in, I've invited, the Holy Spirit, and try to make it a pleasant, not necessarily a religious experience, but a pleasant, welcoming, unconditional love sort of experience for anyone who comes to the gallery. And I have a couple of little inspirational things, some of my angels that I did paint. I have a little booklet of inspirational sayings, and depending if I'm so moved, if I've gotten into a conversation with someone, I will often gift them with either an angel. I have an angel of tranquility, life, passion, protection, and comfort, and sometimes the girls go home with them at no charge. Sometimes I give them a booklet. Not that I give away a lot of things, but if it seems appropriate, if they're in need or hurting. And it's interesting the reaction that I get. It's very unusual to be gifted something at a retail store,
Sure.
and especially something of a spiritual nature. And so it's often very overwhelming.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's, I feel, part of my ministry.
Sure. It is, Jesus says, more blessed to give than receive, but in our culture it's harder to receive.
It is hard to receive, and a lot of them, no, I want to pay you, I want to pay you. It's like, it's a gift, and that does open up a conversation about, accepting their good. And I'm in business to make money.
Sure.
I don't give away everything, but if it's appropriate, I do. When I look at my mission for the work that I'm doing, it's to further my ministry. The store is a platform for me to minister to people who wouldn't be caught dead in a church, but will stand there and read funny cards all day.
Sure.
Which is marvelous, because there are so many people who are
Yes.
Right.
been hurt
Find
by the
themselves.
church, or
Yeah.
or find it in some way off-putting.
Yeah.
This has just been so lovely.
It is.
And I'm so excited for the way in which God is using your gifts and using your particularity, because that's the way that God works, is using exactly who we are in ways that are life-giving. And I love the playful.
Thank you.
Thrilled to have you
Thank
in
you.
this community and in our larger community of faith. Thank you for
Thank you. I
everything
appreciate
give.
you inviting me.
Sure. Good gift.
Yeah.
So, 30 minutes by again fast. We're glad you all have been with us, and we hope you'll take every chance to do God's work with human hands and be a part of the Paducah Cooperative Ministry and its work throughout this community. Until the next time, we'll see you.
Shalom.
Shalom.